Now, let me read this session first, just to make sure I haven't forgotten it. Decoding growth in a volatile economy. How can CFOs balance profit and purpose? Now, all of us know that we are facing a number of headwinds. These headwinds are increasing in size and in number. They're hitting us from all directions. The last 1 year has seen more headwinds, intense headwinds, than any other. And this is a sign of things to come. The nature of competition is changing. None of our businesses are immune. All of us are vulnerable, no matter how profitable, how strong our brands are. That is today. We do not know about tomorrow. We have one gentleman, Mr. Kaushik Mitra, sitting here from PepsiCo. And I was just telling him that this is a great brand which I admire. You guys sell sugar water, carbonated beverages, and between Coke and you have a duopoly. You control the market. Now suddenly from out of nowhere, Reliance is coming. And as we know, when Reliance comes in, things are never the same. They will do whatever they can to grab market share, undercoat, underprice, take over the market. So we have exciting times ahead. And that is true of all our brands, all our businesses. Things will not be the same again. You'll hear more of that from him. Right? Similarly, take the automobile industry. Toyota's biggest competitor today is not Honda. Toyota's biggest competitor are the Chinese. And Chinese who? The Chinese automakers? No, very likely Chinese electronic companies. They are building world-class cars today at a fraction of the cost. And this is coming all of a sudden. That sector is also ripe for disruption. Today we don't know which way the tariff winds will blow, whether Trump will give us a deal or not. Either way, there will be disruption. If there is a deal, it will impact certain sectors very badly. If there's no deal, it will impact other sectors very badly. This is the environment. This is the environment, my friends, in which our businesses operate. So therefore, this session is very, very meaningful. How do you balance growth? Businesses have to grow. If you don't grow, you're not a valuable business any longer. You will soon become a laggard and left behind. But at the same time, you have to look to the future. You've got to scan the horizons. You've got to deploy sufficient capital to be able to fund your future growth and change your business model and be the leaders of such change, not followers. That is the big dilemma. All of us have got pressures. Earnings pressure, growth pressure, volume pressure, share price pressure. This has to be balanced with this future and long-term objective, which our Chinese friends have done very well. And the rules of the game in yesteryear, I'm not so sure will be relevant, how much it will be relevant for the future years. Because of this massive disruptions that we are facing, of course, AI comes foremost to mind there. We have machines and software that can think like us. Did I say think like us? Not really, thinks better than us. Much faster than us, 1,000,000 times faster than us, and doesn't make mistakes. And this AI is improving by the month. Every year this technology is getting, every month this technology is getting better and better. 5 years from now, I shudder to think what it's going to be like here. Will it replace human beings? Who knows? But that is the future that is here to stay. And that will remain. So there is no such thing today as business as usual. So far in India, we have been focusing mainly on labor cost arbitrage for our export markets, whether it's in goods or in services. How long that labor cost arbitrage will continue to be a driver of growth is open to question. My own belief is perhaps not very long. It's just a matter of time when things will change. Labor has a significant advantage, lower labor cost. Labor itself will become less and less meaningful, not just in the services sector, also in manufacturing. You'll have less of labor, more of automation. That's probably the need of the hour. And that means India Inc. needs to invest. It needs to grow its own technology. It needs to create its own technology. It does not have the luxury of relying on somebody else's technology. And today, we are facing a paradox. The world is becoming isolationist. It's not just President Trump. It is all the global economies, developed economies, whether in Europe, whether in China. They want to safeguard their technology, protect it like Fort Knox. They're not going to give you the best technology. We have to necessarily develop our own technology. Today, most of the products and services we consume come from the West or from China. And that's people like you and me. All the electronics in this room comes from overseas. The cars we drive, the technology and the critical components comes from overseas. Yes, it might have a label, Mahindra or Tata or whatever but rest assured the critical components are foreign. The critical technology is foreign. The design and know-how is largely foreign. The food that we eat is farmed by farmers using imported fertilizers. The aeroplanes that we travel in come from overseas. The fuel inside comes from overseas. Sometimes even the pilots come from overseas. We are living in an increasingly interconnected world and we are completely dependent. We are not self-reliant. We never were, and I don't think we ever will be. No country will ever be self-reliant, not even President Trump. Increasingly, we will have interlinkages increasing. At the same time, isolationism will come up and increase. And therefore, what will be the net result? The net result is we will not get the best technology. Today, even defending our country's borders needs foreign technology. Are we getting the best technology? I have my doubts. So we necessarily have to innovate. To grow, we have to set aside money for R&D. We have to develop our own platforms. We've got to scan the horizon. We've got to keep changing. India can no longer be an elephant. It must start learning to dance like a ballerina. That's the writing on the wall. And we as CFOs, as finance leaders, have to be agents, catalysts for this change process. What is our foremost job? Yes, of course, to support, the organization that we work for. But the primary support is to ensure that adequate funding is made available and is set aside for such endeavors. And to educate people, the organization, the stakeholders, all stakeholders, that look, EPS and EPS growth are not the only thing in the world. We should not end up like other businesses have, like Kodak, for example. From blue chip to stone chip. The company is almost wound up today. That will be our future if we don't read the warning lights today. And to speak more on this topic, we have a very, very eminent panel. We are very fortunate with us today. We've got, finance leaders from the top companies in the country. Let me introduce them very quickly. We have Kaushik Mitra, Vice President and CEO of, Vice President and CFO of PepsiCo India and South Asia. Yes, will you raise your hand, please? There you are. And as I told him, he will talk more about, I wish you talk a little bit about Reliance. I'm always interested in what Reliance does. And he will be followed by Suman Hegde, CFO of Jubilant FoodWorks. And please, Jubilant FoodWorks is an interesting company. She will tell you more. They run a bunch of what are called quick service restaurants, which includes chains, international chains like I think Domino's and Popeye. Yes, that's right. And what's the other one? Dunkin' Donuts. And I think you have some of your own brands as well, some of your own franchise brands as well. They are facing, I'm sure, various kinds of pressure. There's pricing pressure, there's distribution pressure, pressure on margins. There's competition from this new Zomato and Swiggy. They have also started their own QSR brands, and she'll tell you more about them, how they're coping with the change. And looking to the future, the third person we have, Chintan Thakkar, who he represents an awesome company, InfoEdge. InfoEdge is a company which I personally and have been very closely following right from the time of their inception many, many years ago, some decades ago. They've gone from strength to strength. They have become the largest, what do you call yourself, job portal or employment portal, I think in the world, by far, beaten the competition hands-on. A very successful company, very cash rich, and they've used their cash wisely. They have also invested in a bouquet of investments, some of whom are giants today. Companies like Zomato and Policy Bazaar and 99 Acres and several others. So he has seen life, he's seeing life from both sides. One, as being in the middle of the business, and second, as an investor. And he will share his insights with you. He will be followed by Preeti Gupta Mohanty, CEO of Schneider Electric. Now, Schneider Electric, this thing is a company which is a global leader in turnkey solutions in energy management. And they have business, I think, Preeti, not just in India, but you're also a global hub for your global operations. So they face all kinds of pressures. They have to quote for long-term contracts. They have to manage the short-term and the volatility. And she will tell you insights, give you insights on that. And finally, we have, last but not least, Ashish Tiwari, CFO of Transport Corporation of India, which is a giant logistics and supply chain backbone. Logistics and supply chain, they are the heart of manufacturing, not just in India, but around the world. And our President Trump, courtesy him, this logistics and supply chain is going through absolute sudden chaos today. These are chains which have been platforms which have been built lovingly across the years. Cross-border platforms suddenly have to be built and rebuilt overnight. And so therefore, without much ado, let me give the floor to them. Kaushik Mitra, VP and CFO of PepsiCo India, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I think, Joy, what a joyful introduction when you said CEO. And yes, a lot of our aspirations are to get to CEO, inshallah, as they say in the Middle East. So look, I think you introduced the topic very well and you went into some detail. So we are in this phase of perform and transform. And it's not an or question, it's an and question. We have to perform for today, the quarter and the year, but we have also got to figure out how we will perform in the next 5 years. And that domain is going to be very, very different from what it is today. So if you really think what the job of the CFO ultimately is to create value, right? Create stakeholder value. And earlier that used to be defined by top line and bottom line. But one additional thing that has come in, and we're talking about, it's not AI, by the way, guys. I know there is a lot of chatter on AI. It's now a trifecta of top line, bottom line, and the planet. You'll agree, isn't it? Environment is taking center stage. And it is going to be the license to operate for all our companies. And we want to leave the world a better place for our next generations. That is going to be a very, very important role that corporations need to play. It has a bearing of what CFOs also need to do. So it's back to that trifecta of top line, bottom line, and environment, and creating that stakeholder value, which is the job today. And look at what's happening. When I say transform, if you look at our industry, everything is changing. It's like a Rubik's Cube turning on so many horizons. Our consumers are changing. Therefore, the growth that we get today and the products that we sell today may not give us the growth that we are aspiring for in the next 5 years. So innovation is going to play a big role. But guess what? With innovations, I think the statistics is out, 1 out of 5 succeed. So the lesson here is fail fast, try, move on. Innovation P&Ls, and I have some of my colleagues sitting in the room here who work very closely with innovation P&Ls, and they can tell you that it's not easy, because the first couple of years, because of the A&M investment, those P&Ls don't work, right? And there is a degree of uncertainty. So, but you have to ensure that you keep innovating, because I think 30 to 40% of future growth is going to come from innovation. Let's say your core will still deliver 60 to 70% of the growth, but innovation is going to deliver the rest. Our customer landscape is changing big time. And India typically, and from an FMCG space and food and beverage industry that I come from, we were always a traditional trade, business, a traditional trade go-to-market, where the mom and pop stores, the kiranas made up 95% of the trade, our customers. And over the last 2 years, suddenly, that world has completely changed. E-commerce is growing. I tell the sales guys it's growing 100%. They tell me no, it's growing 50%. And we negotiate, plan targets, etc. Maybe for target setting purposes. But we have to pivot to the channel that is growing so fast, and that means for the organization, investment in capability, investment in products which will sell in that unique e-commerce and quick commerce channel, right? So, couple of examples of how the external landscape is going to shape how an organization like ours will drive growth, and that nature of growth is going to be very, very different from what we have witnessed in the past. Coming to, let's say, the bottom line and profits and how and what's impacting that. And if you look at it, we have been on this journey of what I call SSAEO, and the finance community will appreciate this: simplification, standardization, automation, elimination, and outsourcing. There's a lot of buzz on automation, but if you don't fix the process first, no amount of automation is going to get you what you want, right? Remember, automation is expensive. You can't do everything. And I keep reminding ourselves, we are not a software company. We are a make, sell, deliver consumer goods company. And therefore, automation and AI is an enabler. It's the means to the end, not the end in itself. And I think we've got to, as CFOs and finance folks, keep reminding everybody, beyond the glitz and glamour of AI and automation, there is a business to run. The third aspect is productivity today is we are tapping out productivity. We have got to the fourth quadrant of productivity. There's not much value in the supply chain and the value chain. So where is the next wave of productivity going to come from? We are looking at things like, DTV, which is basically looking at, in India, the consumer wants more for less. So therefore, tear down the product and understand what the consumer doesn't want. Okay, apply a lens of which part of the value in your product the consumer is not willing to pay for, and remove that. So DTV is going to be a big driver of productivity, right? So the going is going to get tough. And then we come to environment, right? I think that's going to be something that finance folks, and even me, 5 years back or 3 years back, didn't realize that is going to become so important. And now, clearly, the finance folks and the CFOs have to play a big role in not only saying, kitna paisa lagega, but also, actually driving fast adoption of what we need to do and funding for it, because nobody knows how to fund better than the CFOs, right? So even in my head, the clock has changed from, okay, this is a little bit of a cost coming our way, to how do I really invest ahead of the curve, because that's going to give you a competitive edge vis-a-vis others. There is going to be a share price premium on companies who embrace sustainability, and we call it PEP positive in PepsiCo, faster than others, right? So obviously that's the whole dynamics of what's emerging and how it impacts companies. But as a CFO, I think clearly I see that the role is changing. The role is changing from traditionally being stewards of assets and the P&L and the accounts to now being the navigator and catalyst. Sitting in the cockpit of the plane and being the co-pilot. I think Joy said CEO, so maybe the pilot someday, okay? Looking at all the external tailwinds and headwinds, imagine what happened in GST, right? Nobody expected that, but it came suddenly, right? And we are all scrambling to adapt and adopt. So what's required in terms of our skill set and our mindset is resilience, I would say, number one. And today, honestly, I think resilience beats brilliance. Okay, we say culture beats strategy. I think resilience beats brilliance. For all of us, and particularly in the CFO community, our world is you have 10 things to do at work, not even 2 gets ticked off, right? Number 2 is adaptability and having an agile mindset. A lot of the old baggage in our head is not going to work, right? You've got to throw out that baggage and learn, unlearn, and relearn. So I leave you with these 3 messages, which is it's a brave new world, okay? Let's not get enamored by AI. Ultimately, what will remain in the world of AI? Can you imagine what will remain? Because intelligence is not going to be something that's going to drive success. Everybody has it. It's at the press of a button. What is going to remain, therefore, is how you influence each other, how you build trust, how you inspire others, how you lead teams, how do you get the best out of individuals. Yeah? And that resilience is going to be a very, very, very key point going forward for finance professionals and businesses in general. Joy, thank you.
Thank you, Kaushik. Excellent. Now we move on to Suman Hegde, CFO of Jubilant FoodWorks.
I think Kaushik said a lot of things, and maybe it's just a perspective I will share in addition, right? Because one CFO, all CFOs, and always say, finance is quite agnostic to industry and the way you run the P&L. And when we looked at the topic today, when it was saying decoding growth in a volatile economy, and I was thinking, decoding my inbox and calendar on Monday morning is the height of complexity that I thought I had to deal with everybody standing, and everybody wants a piece of their time, and everything is urgent, and because everything is in a volatile environment, right? But coming to the point right now, they're discussing volatility, and in fact, just yesterday, I was in an investor conference and somebody said, it's a very difficult environment we're currently operating in. What is the insight? So our CEO said, give me a point in time when it has not been a difficult environment or it's not been a volatile environment. Can you call out 1 year to us when it has not been? Which just sets the message of saying that volatility is now part of who we are and what we endure. Geopolitical turmoil, always there. Some part of the world or the other, and we sit in the midst of it. It impacts India as much as anything happening globally impacts India. Technological shifts now is a new constant. Consumer behavior is shifting. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, it's a world shift of how consumer behaviors have changed, and it's disrupted all industries across the board. Right? So volatility is a constant, and I think when you say decoding growth in that, as finance leaders or CFOs, when we say growth, earlier it's about saying, okay, how do I grow the top line? What do I need to do? How much more volume I need to sell? What's the pricing I need to take? But today, more and more, I think the organization is sitting, and I think Kaushik said it brilliantly, right? It's not about decoding how to get growth. It's about decoding how resilient your current balance sheet is and your P&L is for the present. How much foresight do you have of what's coming up for you in the future? And is your current plans or what you think is going to happen, is it going to take you there? And how agile or adaptable you are, right? To be able to take on what's coming your way. Are you sitting and reacting to everything that's happening? Or are you thinking 5, 10, 20 steps ahead of what's coming your way and how you will deal with it? Are you building the thinking, mindset, infrastructure, talent, and your balance sheet to be able to deal with it? Disrupt before you get disrupted was something a CEO I used to work with used to constantly say, right? You will get disrupted. That is inevitable. It's about how do you ensure you disrupt before you get disrupted or your business model gets disrupted. Joy spoke about Kodak. When I started my career, BlackBerry was the most premium thing around. Only investment bankers carried it, and I joined a lowly FMCG company called HUL, where we were called factory accountants, so nobody gave us a BlackBerry. But today, there is no BlackBerry. Even to that extent, Nokia, right? Brilliant companies, brilliant minds, strong balance sheets. It's just about the foresight and the ability to change fast. And now when we say generations used to change over like 20 years, now you have a new generation, 20, 30 years, now every 10 years is a new generation. So I think volatility is here to stay. Decoding growth is the ability to be able to look into the future and say, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to handle it? And as CFOs, the constant thing we have to keep asking ourselves when anything comes our way is saying, am I ensuring investments are going behind technologies of the future? Is investment going behind product innovation, which is going to be there and be disrupted? Am I investing behind talent who can take us into the future? Yes, there are going to be short-term pressures. Profitability is important. There are quarter results that have to be delivered. But balancing out that performance with potential and where you see value will get created in the future, I think is going to be a key role for every finance leader and CFOs going forward, as included the people on the panel. I think that's really going to be key. How do you balance caution, which is the C word, very important for CFOs, but also have the courage to take bold bets and not be so risk averse that you don't look at the smart choices you need to make. I think that's going to be key to it. And finally, from a CFO's perspective today, from the time of being called bean counters to manage the books, I think we've moved to say we are the ones planting the beans. If anybody's read the Jack and the Beanstalk, right? You plant the beans today, you will rise up to the sky. And from managing the books to saying I'm the one writing the business playbooks, which will take us into the future. I think that's really my quick summary of what I believe is important in the economy going forward, and as CFOs, what we need to adapt to. Thank you.
Thank you, Suman. And now, who's next? Now, we move to Chintan Thakkar, CFO.
Thanks, Joy. It was a wonderful opening remarks that you have, and I'm now wondering what do I add after Kaushik spoke and Suman spoke, and of course, I know some of the faces, I know some of you, and it's brilliant mind out here, So there's not much to add, but I'll probably, try to see how I look at this topic. And, yes, it's very true, Joy, you said about, the uncertainty and volatility that we have. I really think that, we are kind of entering a phase where we really do not know what's going to come and hit us, right? And we probably do not even know that we do not know. So we are really in a zone which is a blind spot, which is don't know spot. Right? So it's very, very, very complicated, difficult to really figure out what kind of risk is going to come. Some of the traditional thing, the way we are approaching, that's all fine. That's not that they are gone, but there are new things which are coming, which are still emerging, and we don't know what that next future is going to be. When we talk about balancing profit and purpose, I think the definition of profit itself is changing. Right? In 2014, WhatsApp had $20 million top line, right? No profits. Got sold at 19 billion. By the time the transaction got completed, it was 21 billion. Right? Now, it's not about profit, and I'm not saying profit is not important, but the larger context of profit, the larger context of cash is value creation. So you have to see everything in the context of value creation. If you are creating value, there's a profit, there's no profit, it's all fine. Stakeholders are okay with it as long as you have, you have articulated what you are up to, right? Purpose also, it's very different purpose, Of course, when you talk about purpose, usually people take it as ESG, which is again important, but ultimately it is the long-term sustainability of the enterprise that you are running. So I would put it more as a sustainable value creation, then that's where the CFO role comes in. So what do we do in this type of environment, right? It's not that I have all the answers, but there are 2 or 3 things that I would want to point out. That our CFO's role is changing. The expectations from everyone is changing, not only internally, but even externally, whether it is regulators, whether it is the investors, employees, the entire society, that's all looking at our CFO leadership in a very different way. So expectations are changing. We are more seen as a bridge, to what is possible in future, right? And what is sustainable. So it's the journey from what is sustainable and what is possible, and try to balance this out. It's all about the balancing act And that's where the CFO leadership comes in, right? Two or three things, like I said, that I would say that focus on intangibles, right? And see a CFO's role in creating and enhancing the intangibles. Everyone understands the brand, for example, right, as an intangible or IP rights. But there are lot many softer factors also. When you talk about intangibles, it could be reputation, it could be the governance. In fact, our stock, many investors says that we get, 15, 20, 25% of premium just because, it's being perceived as a great governed company, right? So governance is just not the ethics issue, but it makes sense. It makes economic sense. So those are the individual intangibles through which CFO can create value, and you need to focus that. It could be the internal, it could be the analytics team that you have. It could be the processes that you set and the insights that you get through some of those processes. They are all intangible, so focus on intangibles. Remain closer to the stakeholders. And again, it's just not investor, but maybe you want to go and talk to customers, to vendors, to employees, all stakeholders, regulators. Regulators could be a great, policy advocacy is now, it's all a reality. We need to kind of, and Indian corporate has not been very strong in the policy advocacy, but I think it's a new age, new era where we need to get closer to government, see how regulators are thinking about it. There could be threat which you can contain it, or there could be opportunities coming to you. So I think this also we need to look at that. So stay close to stakeholders. The capital allocation, right? Joy mentioned about saying how Info Edge, when it's making profits in Naukri, how we invested in some of the startups that we did, right? And it kind of, there are different models, so the new business models are also part of the softer factors that we are talking of, right? So Zomato's and Policybazaar in 2008, 9, nobody kind of would have invested at that point in time, but we kind of looked at the challenges of future and we started investing in it. Even today, you may not be knowing, but we have so much of investment that's going into deep tech. We have not really, India as an corporate, Indian corporates have not invested so much on deep tech. And again, Joy mentioned about the research and development where our contribution seems to be much low. I think that's something which we need to see what more can be done. That's also another area where you can create a lot more value creation. So figure out what is the short-term, long-term priorities. Like Suman mentioned, you need to be careful about that. There are some trade-offs. You need to select which trade-off you know to take. But these are some of the key points that I would want to highlight.
Thanks, very enlightening, Chintan. And now we move on to Preeti Gupta Mohanty.
Thank you, Joy. And thanks to all of you for making time to be here today. I work in an industry which the businesses of industrial automation and energy management. And while the topic is very vast, I plan to touch upon two key aspects of what Joy talked about. One, on the volatility that I see in this energy landscape. And the second one being on my take on how I see profit versus purpose. So on the energy landscape, I think we all see around, that it's rapidly changing. And much of the war, geopolitical tensions that we see today, right, the conflicts that we see across countries today, at the helm of it is energy, right? It's the oil and gas, the access to oil and gas. And, I work for a business which the purpose of the business is to provide access to energy and to make energy resources more efficient. So my dilemma, I think, how I see the volatility in business is that we today, as a global economy, is at the inflection point of energy landscape, right? We know the rapid pace of climate change. We know how new, clean and green energy landscape is emerging. We need to invest into more renewable resources of energy, keep updating ourselves. Just to give you a very recent example of new energy landscape is now the consumers of energy are becoming prosumers. And the concept has started more in Western world, and it is slowly trickling down into India, including myself, right? I've become a prosumer, which means that, people have started installing solar panels and connected to grid, which means you're not even producing energy for your own home consumption, you're also dispatching the excess to grid. So ultimately, your electricity bill at the end of the month is payable by grid to you, right? So that's how the landscape is rapidly evolving. It's about how we as an industry are going to invest into the innovation, invest into the R&D part of it. And that is where the dilemma of a CFO also comes into short-term versus long-term, right? Just the second part of it, and I'll address the innovation piece. The second part of it, which I see, is the question on profit versus purpose. And my experience so far, it's not profit versus purpose. It is purpose and profit, right? Just to reflect back on few projects which I have worked on and approved. One of our largest manufacturing facility in India is in Hyderabad, right? And we made an investment into making that factory more sustainable, more greener, more cleaner, more decarbonized. And how the facts say it is, within 4 years, we were able to achieve waste management, water consumption, and energy consumption reduced by more than 55%, right? And the emissions were reduced by more than 60%. The payback for that factory was much more than what we expected for the investment we made in sustainability. And today that factory, the Hyderabad factory of Schneider, is also one of the lighthouse of sustainability worldwide. And how I associate this, with is that your investment in sustainability is not just the payback, which I actually got. It's also about investment in building the trust with your consumers, right? Both consumers and employees, how I see it, would love to work for a company or be associated with a company which is working with a purpose and which is working for a larger cause. So maybe FMCGs invest in brand building, in this is something which is invaluable of how you're building the trust of your employees and your consumers. So that's an intangible ROI which my colleagues spoke about. And to a CFO, if in the larger scheme of things, that's priceless, right? And again, I think the second example recently, which I worked upon is now we see the captive solar units, right? The payback for switching from, conventional resources of energy, fossil fuel-based energy, to captive solar energy units, which it's very fungible. It's less than 2 years payback, to be honest. So I personally feel it's not an equation even in financial terms, because it's sustainability plus profit plus purpose, right, and plus customer trust. So it stands invaluable. So that's from my experience. I think I'll pass on to Joy again.
Thanks, Preeti. It was very enlightening. And finally, we have Ashish Tiwari, CFO of Transport Corporation of India.
Thank you. I'm wondering what I should talk about now, because it's almost my esteemed co-panelist has covered entire gamut of the topic. But still, I would try to talk about something which is from my experience. So I come from a logistics industry. We have been handling from needle to, let's say, wind turbine. So is the handling, there is a need of like who can handle. So the person, the resources which handles a needle, they won't be handling the wind turbines. It's something about when we talk about volatility, actually we should see, as a CFOs, what we should be seeing is there any opportunity in uncertainty? Or that's comes to a point that are you proactive to just to preempt something, then you can check out something, some plan, and in partnership with other functions in your organization or wherever you are working, you can do a kind of action plan where you tap the market, which is of course surrounded by the uncertainty. So I can give you several examples from my experience. So one is just recently when the Prime Minister announced that there are rate cuts and the goods are being cheaper, and there would be a consumption which is going to be buoyant. So we immediately thought of that if there is a gap in terms of rate cut and when it is effective, obviously there is going to be a temporary demand for a space, because every company wants to hold or maybe some kind of uh, uh, um, gap is there in the supply chain. So my team did a survey and we found out that there are some spaces where we can create the capacity which is temporary capacity and which is being done. And obviously like today that is on all premium we have sold. So like this is something what I wanted to tell you is that it's a more of a partnership with the other guys in your organization. The second is we talked about resource reallocation, which is also something which actually helps in when you navigate something which is uncertain. Um, so in my industry, there is lot of talks about carbon emission. So as a matter of fact, logistics is the biggest polluter, like as a whole. And it's all about the supply chain. So we have find out the way to how to kind of address it without having a cost impact, because as we know that EV on the roads except the last mile, and you can see that you have small vehicles, goods vehicles, which can deliver to up to a certain load and also the kilometers. But on the longer side, unless until there is some infra side developments for the charging, or there is a some innovation around the fuel like the hydrogen things, that won't be possible on a that long haul journeys. So my company in last let's say 7-8 years back, even 10 years back, we have kind of uh, transformed the business to a multi-modal. And multi-modal is what? It's a kind of a more than one mode of transportation, obviously. So it's a more of a railway tracks, or we can use a coastal shipping. So that way also we have delivered a value which is not on the cost, which is not which is also cost effective. So that is also something we could kind of tap the growth, the market without compromising on the cost. Lastly, I think as a CFO, we have to be more open on the artificial intelligence. This is a kind of something which is talked about in all the discussions, but the AI would be something which is a new way to do the business. It may be simple today, but let's say after 10 year, 15 year down the line, probably the models today which are working probably going to change. So it's a something which is on a CFO part of it is more of to be proactive in adoption. Wherever you can do it, you should be doing it. Thank you.
Good. I think that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, guys. You've got, as I said, we're all fortunate today. We've got some of the brightest minds in cutting edge companies giving you insights. And let me actually get up. What I've done here is while they were speaking, I tried to jot down what I thought was from each of them the single most important learning for me. And here's what I've written. Kaushik said something very profound there. He said, if you fail, get up, dust yourself, and move on. And I think that's a very valuable lesson for all of us here. Many of the things that we do, our organizations do, or we in our respective functions do, are not going to succeed. But if we are worried about failure, then we will become too risk averse and the world will move by. Other people who are not so worried about us will get ahead of us. And that's a very important learning. Failure in any new initiative that you do, that is not something which one should be worried about. Rather, I would say, what is more important is we should be able to spot the failure early on, take corrective action, and minimize further losses. That's very, very important. You failed, you fallen down, something's happened you didn't anticipate. Get up, dust yourself, change course direction, and move on. Cut your losses. That's, I think, very, very important and valuable lesson for all our organizations and for all of us. Suman said something very profound. Disrupt yourself before you get disrupted. Very important. There's always a first mover advantage. And if you can capitalize on a first mover advantage and others are trying to play catch up, you'll always be ahead of them. Very, very profound learning. Chintan spoke about profits versus long-term value creation. Value creation is everything. Are you preserving your value, your long-term value? Are you growing your long-term value? Profits is, yes, a very important benchmark. But I think we, particularly those of us with an accounting background like me, pay too much emphasis on profits. That should not be the sole parameter alone. And there's a need for balance between various parameters. Preeti gave us an excellent insight on the need to invest in renewable energy. We keep saying, Acha, this is not important, that is not important, why should I care? And then you end up having the Yamuna River being what it is. And her insight that you can actually make renewable energy pay for itself. And her insights that yes, they've done this intelligently in the factory in Hyderabad and actually increased profits, brought down costs. So there are innovative ways of doing things. Everything does not necessarily have to add to cost. And finally, Ashish spoke about the need for partnership. None of us are prima donnas. We are all part of a team. And we have to carry the whole team with us. And the team as a whole will have to transform. So these were the headlines. I mean, they spoke about other things as well. I thought, let me list down what, according to me, was the most important theme. So excellent. Now, finally, I'd like to end with a quote from Shakespeare. Shakespeare, 500 years ago, had made a very profound, written something very profound in his play Julius Caesar. He had written, there is a tide in the affairs of men. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which when taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. There's a tide in the affairs of men. Tide aata hai. If you take the tide, it will lead on to fortune. Omitted, all voyage of their life is bound in shallows and miseries. What this means is, when the tide comes, sail your boat. Don't keep thinking, overthinking, or miss the tide. You will lose an opportunity. But I want to make one small correction to Shakespeare. He spoke about a tide. What we are facing in today's world is not a tide, it's a tsunami. There's a difference, vast difference between a tide and a tsunami. Tides are predictable. Tsunamis are not predictable. Tsunamis come maybe once or maybe twice in a lifetime. We cannot predict when it will come. It hits you suddenly. We cannot predict the intensity. We cannot predict the height. That's what we are facing. We have to be ready to sail our boats in the tsunami. And many of our organizations will actually emerge much stronger. I don't want to be a prophet of doom and gloom. I think India Inc. can withstand all these pressures and come out on top. We've done it before. Indian banks have beaten the pants off foreign competition. And so have Indian insurance companies. And so have some of our automotive companies. I don't think Ashok Leyland and Tata Motors are too much worried about competition in the truck segment. Let them come. TVS and various other companies, their two-wheelers flood the African market, flood the Latin American market, right? And they've beaten the pants of Chinese competition. We've done it before, we will do it again. There is enough and more opportunity for India Inc. And I look forward to a glorious future for all of you. I probably am close to ending my innings, but you guys are going to have a far more glorious future than I have had in my time. Now let's break for Q&A. Q&A, I think I let my colleagues do all the hard work. Do we have any questions?
Hey, while you start Q&A, I mean, since you quoted Shakespeare, I just could not. I had to pick up the mic. I mean, the other quote that comes to mind is, to be or not to be, that is the question. To take up oars against a sea of troubles.
No, I want to have something which is more Indian, right? And it's on a little lighter note. But if I, with your permission, can I say some शायरी? शायरी बोल सकता हूँ मैं? So एक CFO के लिए एक मेरे पास में एक शायरी है, right? मुख्तसर जिंदगी के अजीब अफसाने हैं. मुख्तसर इस छोटी सी जिंदगी के अजीब अफसाने हैं. यहाँ तीर भी चलाने हैं और परिंदे भी बचाने हैं.
For those of you all who don't know, Chintan sir loves music. He's a very, very good singer. We'll be happy to take a couple of audience questions. Yes, please.
Good evening, sir. Sir, that was really a very nice, brilliant, didactic discourse today. Sir, I have one question, sir. Sir, in the pursuit of balancing profit and purpose, less profit, little profit, break even, that much is okay. But sir, my question is, sir, how do you manage risk when in the pursuit of purpose-driven initiative that may initially reduce profitability or make the startup turning into loss? And the second question, complementary to this one, how do you communicate this financial value message to the stakeholders who is skeptical about near-term impact?
Wonderful. Both are excellent questions. How do you balance risk and profit? And how do you communicate to stakeholders? Sometimes you have to bite the bitter pill. How do you communicate? Chintan would like to take this question.
Sure. I had a little different take on this, right? Because I said that maybe in short term it's profit, but in the longer run, what you are really doing is value creation, right? So it's not so much about profit, but it's about, are you creating a value or not? And to answer it a little bit more specifically, when you are not having profits or when you are doing a cash burn, and most of the time it happens in startups, you need to look at the texture and the flavor of the losses that you are doing. So it's just not that cash burn by itself is not a bad word, right? But it is where and how the cash burn is happening. Are you creating something which is of enduring nature? Are you creating, maybe just you are bringing more traffic, we are kind of getting more customers, you are creating brand. There could be many reasons why this cash burn is there. And you need to really see that, is that something that is being created, right? Now, having said that, you need to also, I talked about capital allocation, that you need to ensure that you have a proper liquidity management, because profit is finally the oxygen for the business. So I'm not undermining profits, not undermining cash flows, but you need to see how the capital allocation is happening, and then accordingly take a call for that particular situation of how you want to handle that.
Just to add 30 seconds, I mean, everybody is very clear about risk. This is our bread and butter job. But integrating the risk conversations in the business is the most important, element of de-risking, because it's the weakest link, and therefore proportional ownership of risk and having those business conversations is, and integrating it with the business rather than just the fiduciary functions, legal and finance and control, doing that in their own circle. That doesn't help, right? I think so. It has to be proportionately owned, and it has to be part of strategy, part of review discussion, and center to the business.
Yes, please, Ashish, go ahead.
So in a scenario when you your question, it's also very important to have a good governance, because governance is the highest risk in any of the, whether profit making or loss making, and it's always. I'm just telling you from my experience, the most of the cases actually is on a governance part. Instead of you are making a profit, or you are making profit today, or you may not be making tomorrow. So it has to be also taken into account.
We have time for one final question.
I have one question. In terms of capital allocation, how you balance out the profit and the part of purpose? Because many times when the allocation of capital is risky, there's a lot of expectation from the shareholders and other people in terms of IRR and other XRR returns. So, but purpose fall back. So, how you balance it?
This is a very good question. I think his question is, if you've got, let's say, two great projects, Project 1 and Project 2. Both projects have their champions. How do, and you don't have, right, you have to strike a balance. There's not infinite capital, etc. You've got a finite pool of capital. How do you help the organization choose between one and the other? I think that's a very relevant question, very, very relevant question. You can't do too many things. One needs to prioritize. As CFOs, how would you choose such allocation? Who would like to volunteer from the panel?
So it's a good thing that today there is several other parameters which is not not financial. So we have several models, financial model to kind of figure out which is the best financially. But also today there is a lot of talk about the ESG part of it. So which is more sustainable, not only on an environmental part of it, but also socially as well.
Any of my other colleagues like to add something? Chintan?
I'll reiterate that liquidity management is important, and what is the purpose that we are really talking about, right? Because finally all the organizations are for creation of value for the stakeholders, right? So if you are not going to exist after a year or 2 or 3 years, there is no point in having a long-term kind of a decision, and you don't have the liquidity. So you need to balance the liquidity management with what project you select for that. And again, the key part is, if you are creating value and if you can articulate well to your stakeholders, they would support you. They would support you for the further fund rounds or whatever capital that you need. That.
A specific question, Chintan, was going to add to that. If there are two great projects, say Naukri.com, Project 1, Project 2, both have got their champions. How do you help decide and help the organization decide that I should back Project 1 and not Project 2? Because capital is limited. You can't chase everything. That was a specific question.
Yeah, of course, if capital is limited, then something which is more short term, I think that's what would probably come in the priority. But if you have the capital, right? Like, so when InfoEdge made the decision to invest in some of these startups that they did, or right now we kind of do a lot of investment in deep tech, is because we have enough capital, right? We also had taken a call to have more capital rather than debt, because sometimes when in the tech-driven, innovation-driven company, in the tech-driven or innovation-driven organization, debt is sometimes an issue. So maybe you need to also look at what capital you have, and if capital is limited, go for something which is far short-term rather than a very long-term short-term.
I only hope, Chintan, that over time, India Inc. tries to go more long-term, like our Chinese friends do, like many of these US companies do. Just think, if the India software services sector had used their profits, some portion of their profits, maybe 25, 30%, right, to do some of these exciting things that are being done today, things would have been different. Yes, they've been very profitable, they paid taxes, they've given dividends, they're buying back shares, etc., etc. Yeah. But now they have to, I wouldn't say it's too late. They have to definitely think long-term and put in capital for the long-term growth and long-term sustainability of the organization.
True. Yeah. So government this time budget, I think they announced 1 lakh crore for the long-term kind of investment in startups. SIDBI makes a lot of investments in the startup. They have a fund of funds. So they are doing, but they are baby steps as compared to what China has done. But I think they are in that direction. So there is a realization that the domestic capital is not sufficient. And I agree with you that a lot of corporates are sitting on a lot of cash. If I have to make a suggestion to Nirmala Sitharaman, I would say reduce the dividend tax, because people are not giving enough dividend just because of high, rates of taxes. So distribution tax is still very high. But if that happens, then I think there will be more capital that will be available to take a riskier kind of a long-term projects.
I think
it's the need of an hour. I totally agree.
No, I have a slightly different view. I think it's a mindset. Okay. Short term versus long term, and if we today, I think that shift in mindset is required, right? We are too short term in terms of our mindset, even as finance fraternity, CFOs, etc. Balancing the short term and the long term. I mean, even in terms of your time allocation, forget about companies, resources and capital, how much time are you really spending on the long term? Therefore, capital allocation is also like that. So it's not a choice of this or that. It has got to be a fine balance. And if you don't allocate capital for the longer term, it's going to be licensed to operate. You may not have a business.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody. Thank you panelists. It's been a great session.